Hi crafters! Today I have 3 holiday Cricut projects to show you that are all about making holiday decor for less. First up is an adorable mug with gnomes. To save some time, I previously bookmarked a bunch of different gnome images within Cricut Design Space, as well as a template for the 15-ounce Cricut mug. Once added to the project, I scaled down the gnomes and played around with the arrangement on the template. Once I settled on the placement, I added a fun saying by selecting text and typing in chillin' with my gnomies. Then, searching through the fonts, I selected this one that I felt matched well. After some final rearranging, I selected attach to ensure it was going to be cut as one design versus separate images across the page. I used Infusible Ink for this mug, so I made sure to choose the matte option and then toggled mirrored image. As you can see, it's showing extra pages, but I want to make sure the Cricut doesn't actually cut the template and only cuts the gnome design and text. To do so, I go to the extra pages and click Hide Selected. So now when I click Continue, you can see it will only cut the gnome design. Next, I select the material by typing in Infusible Ink in the search bar. Now that the machine is ready to go, I need to load the Infusible Ink. For this mug, I'm using Cricut's Distressed Cool Waters Infusible Ink in the darkest color. I place it on the standard grip mat and load it into my Cricut Maker 3. Once it goes through the loading process, I click the Start button and it does its thing. When it's done, I click the flashing Unload button and cut around the design to make it more manageable. Now it's time to weed the design, which means removing all of the parts that aren't part of the final design. Because the font was so small, some of the letters came off and I had to put them back in place. But once it was all weeded, I wrapped the design around the mug and used Cricut's heat-resistant tape to secure the included parchment paper around it. Next, I set up my Cricut mug press, slide the mug inside, and push down to start it. The mug press automatically does its thing and there aren't any settings I need to select. The lights will blink until eventually all are blinking and it beeps. This means it's done, and you can carefully remove the mug when it's cool to touch the handle. I placed the mug on the Cricut Easy Press mat to cool completely. Then I was able to peel off the Infusible Ink. As you can see, I was not very graceful during this process, but eventually was able to get it all off and reveal the design underneath. For the next holiday decor project, I made a custom doormat. I saw a similar one online for over $30 and immediately thought I could make it for much less and as a bonus, customize the sayings to what I want. So jumping into Cricut Design Space, I selected the font and adjusted the line spacing until it was how I liked. Then I set the width to 20 inches to make sure it would fit on the doormat. The material I used for this one was the Cricut Smart Stencil, which means I don't need to use a mat for it. I did adjust the placement of the cut though, so that it was in the middle of the material, giving more room on the sides. I'm a huge fan of the Smart material since all you have to do is select the type of material and load it in. By the way, I've linked to all of the materials for all of the projects in the description. After the stencil finished cutting, I cut it out with an inch or two of space. Since it's a stencil, I want to give myself some grace in case I get paint everywhere. When weeding it, I remove the letters and not the excess because this is what I'll paint inside of. This is the opposite of standard weeding since it's a stencil. Now this is where I pause to point out that I regret using the flexible stencil material. Instead, I should have used stiff stencil material or even cardstock. This is because I had to go through extra steps to transfer the stencil and get it nicely organized. I used the flexible stencil so I could use it for other projects as well, but I definitely recommend using the stiff kind or cardstock for this project. Using the transfer paper, I was able to get the stencil all in one to the mat, but then removing the transfer paper was an absolute pain. For reference, this is me at 50x speed. Eventually I got it all in place and it still worked out fine, but it definitely was not fun times. I used a paintbrush with stiff bristles to dab black acrylic paint over each letter of the stencil. I was careful not to move the stencil too much, but it thankfully stayed in place. Then while the paint was still wet, I lifted the stencil and used a weeding tool to remove the center bits of the letters. Once dry, the custom doormat is ready to use. And now for the last project, I made a bunch of winter and holiday themed window clinks. I previously bookmarked various snowflakes, candies, and a gingerbread man, so I selected those and added them to the canvas. I then resized each one so that it was between 2 and 4 inches. I wanted there to be a variety of different sizes. I even copied the same snowflakes and scaled them up and down to create variations. To make a gingerbread girl, I took an image of a bow and placed it over the gingerbread man. then selected Slice and deleted the extra cuts. After I was happy with all the images, I made them the same color and clicked on Make. The window cling I used for this was Cricut's Frosted Window Cling, which isn't a smart material, so I needed to use the mat. Selecting the correct material type will ensure the Cricut cuts with the correct speed and pressure. This way, the vinyl will be cut, but not the backing. I cut off a section of the roll and placed it on the mat, then loaded it into the Cricut. For this type of vinyl, you actually place it face up and you don't need to mirror the image. After it was all done, I flipped the mat over and peeled the mat away from the vinyl. This helps prevent the vinyl from curling. Now, weeding these window clings was the most satisfying part of all of these projects. I don't know what it is about the window cling material, but it is absolutely delightful to peel apart. I ended up also removing all of the excess so that I can store the clings back on the paper backing. Here are a few of the larger snowflakes ready to use. And here are just a few of them on my window. I link to all of these designs below, so you can make them yourself or customize them further. Let me know in the comments which project was your favorite. And if you liked this video, please give it a like, and subscribe to the channel to get notified whenever I post a new video. And to see what I'm crafting day to day, follow me across my socials.